Don't forget to like and subscribe to Jolie Knots Crochet. Share with your friends. Hit that little notification bell so you can get notified when new patterns release. All our videos are available in left and right-handed tutorials. Hi everyone, welcome back to Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal and today we are going to be making this feather stitch fingerless glove. Now this glove is worked with the feather stitch in continuous rounds and it gives it a very different look than the regular feather stitch. So I'm going to be showing you how to make the ribbing, how to get started with the feather stitch without holes, working up to an increase and then to your fingers. So this is the one that we're going to be making today. You can make it longer up on the top just with more rows of repeats if you want it to go higher on your fingers. All right, these yarns are all category 4 weight. The one that we are going to be working on today, I am using Yarn Bee's Rustic Romance. Now this one I picked up at Hobby Lobby on clearance last year. It consists of 228 yards. We will be able to get our 2 gloves out of this, so you only need 1 ball. The color of this one is called Faded Porch Swing. It is a 15% hemp, 85% acrylic, and a medium 4-weight yarn. Now the recommended hook size for this is a 6mm because we're making fingerless gloves and we want it to be nice and tight without a bunch of holes going on through it. So today we're going to be using a 5mm hook, and I did use a 5mm hook on both of these sets as well. These gloves right here, this is from Ice Yarns. Now this one is categorized as a bulky 5-weight yarn. It's a 50% wool and a 50% acrylic. It's called Favorite Wool, and it does slowly change through the colors. So it's a really nice one. I don't consider it a bulky 5-weight yarn. I think it's pretty much the same as this Rustic Romance 4-weight, which is actually more on the thinner side of a yarn. But I did use a 5mm hook on this one as well. The texture is not as easy to see, but you can still see it, of course. And the other one, this one here, for this set of gloves, I also used Ice Yarns, and this one is Cakes Blues. It is a 100% acrylic yarn in a 4-weight. Okay, and this is what I've got left from the ball that I made both of these at. Let's see, the yardage on this, well, the meters is 210 meters, so the yardage, of course, is more than that. It's about the same as this one because this is a 208 meters. The yardage is 228, so you'll be good with 1 skein of this also. This is also what's left over in the wool one, so you definitely will get more than a set of gloves out of this. All right, everybody, you're also going to need some scissors and of course a tapestry needle to weave in your ends. It is recommended that you have at least 1 stitch marker because we're working in continuous rounds. You're going to need a spot to be able to count your stitches so you know when to get to the increase. All right, everybody, go ahead and get your materials and we will get started. So the first thing we're going to do is get our yarn and go ahead and put it on a slip knot. Let's get our hook on that slip knot, and you're going to chain 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now skipping the first chain from your hook into the second chain, we're going to put a single crochet. And we're going to put a single crochet into every chain all the way down. Now you should have 12 single crochets all the way down. This is going to be the band that's going around our wrist. So if you want your band, your ribbed band, to be smaller, than this, then you can shorten it or you can even lengthen it. Whatever is the most ideal for you, okay? So I'm going to keep going with my single crochets. When you get to the end, you're going to chain one, turn your work, and in your first stitch, you're going to go through both loops and create a single crochet. Now through the next 10 stitches, we are only going to single crochet through the back loop, and that's what's going to help to create our ridges. Your first stitch and your last stitch will be the only ones through both loops. You don't have to do it that way, but I like to do it that way because I think that it creates a cleaner edge. Okay, so here we are at our last stitch. We're going to go through both of our loops, remember? And that's our repeat row. So you're going to have 26 rows total. So repeat row 2, single crocheting into both loops of the first and the last stitch, and then just into the back loop only of the middle 10 stitches. Keep doing that until you have 26 rows. Now, if you have larger hands, or smaller hands if you're making it for a child, the only thing that you want to do to make sure is that you have multiples of 2. Maybe you're using a smaller yarn or a bigger hook. This pattern is customizable with any hook and yarn because all you really need are multiples of 2. Make sure that that fits right around your wrist. And I will meet you right back here to show you how to slip stitch it up. Okay, here we are after 26 rows. Let me show you an easy way to count the rows. When you've just finished, this is 1, this is 2. So I count each one of these as 2. So I go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. All right, so now when I slip stitch it together, I'm going to turn my work so I can go back this way, bring my other end and pull that together. And now my first stitch, just like usual, I'm going to go through both loops. But on this other side, it's just a chain from that first stitch. All right, pull through and slip stitch. Now for the other ones, for the middle 10, just like before, I'm going to go through the back loop only. And what this is going to do is going to allow me to make my slip stitch and you not really be able to see where the seam is because we're still going with the pattern of our ribbing. So slip stitch into the back loop only for the next 10 stitches. Now that we've gotten to the last stitch, we're going to go through both loops just like we did the first stitch. Chain 1, and that's how we have made our ring. Okay, so flip your work inside out because that's now going to be the inside. Make sure that you are working on the right side and that your seam is in the middle. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is put a half double crochet into every single row. So I should have 26 half double crochets. I'm going to go over my tail. You can go over your tail if you want. You don't have to. Now where this first ridge is, that's where your first row is. So this gap right here is not really a stitch, that's just your chain. So moving above the ridge, that's your first. Continue on 26 half double crochets all the way around. Okay, here I am at the end. I've got my last half double crochet to do. And now I'm just going to slip stitch it to the top of my first half double crochet. And that's it. So our first 3 rounds are going to be setup rounds. So this round again is a round of half double crochets, 1 half double crochet on top of every half double crochet. When we finish this, I will show you how to get started on the first round of our feathers, and then the next round will be repeats. All right, here I am at the end of my second round of half double crochets. That will be the last round that we slip stitch. The rest of our rounds going up are going to be continuous. So here's what we're going to do. Into this row, we are going to be working in between our half double crochets from this row and from our first row. So let me show you. We're going to have 3 legs to each of these stitches. It's pretty much a puff stitch into different sections. So our first one, we're going to chain 1, and then right between our chain space and our first half double crochet, we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. So you should have 3 loops on your hook. Now you're going to skip 2 half double crochets, and between these 2, you're going to go down 1. So these are the next 2 stitches we're working into. So we're going to work underneath it first, yarn over, go underneath and in between the 2 half double crochets, pull up a loop, and now we're going to go into that one right above it. So yarn over into between the stitches and pull up a loop, yarn over, and you'll pull through all of your loops. Okay? Chain 1 to secure. Now your next stitch, we're going to go into the same space that the last leg finished on, skipping 2 half double crochets. This will be our third space, and the one right underneath it is going to be our second space. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. Yarn over through the same space the last one finished in, yarn over 2, down 1, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, go into the space directly above that. It's a little bit harder to see because now you have, stitches coming across, but it's just directly above that. Yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you'll yarn over and pull through all, chain 1. You should have 13 feather stitches. If your hand is bigger, of course, you can increase by multiples of 2. If your hand is smaller or you're making it for a child, you can decrease in multiples of 2. Here we are at the end at our last feather stitch. We're going to work it the same way. It's a little bit confusing because you've got these chain 1s, but no worry, just go over 2, and that's the first space that you're going to go into, right underneath it. Pull up, yarn over, and go over. All right, just like that. Now, this is the last feather stitch of this round. All right, so I'm going to put my stitch marker through the last stitch, just through some of those loops in the front. Okay, so that is the end of your setup rows. Now, this will be our repeat row. Our repeat row is different than this feather stitch row. And what we're gonna do now is hug each feather stitch. So our first leg is going to be through the space right before the stitch. Okay? Yarn over, pull through. Now, our second leg is going to be in the space directly under the first. Yarn over, pull up a loop. And our last leg is going to be directly after the feather stitch. So yarn over, go through, pull up a loop. Yarn over, pull through all, chain 1 to secure. So our legs now, first leg, second leg is directly underneath it, and then our third leg is directly after it. So we're going to be hugging every feather stitch with 3 legs. So yarn over, go through your first space, second space, third space. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops on your hook. Now I'm yarning over, pulling through all, chaining 1. And we're just going to continue that. We are going to continue this for 6 rounds total. Continuously. We are not going to be slip stitching to end rounds. We're just going to keep going across just like we did here. Okay, so continue all the way around. This will be the first one you count, and then we'll continue counting up to 6, and I will meet you right back. Let me show you how I'm counting my rounds. I'm not going to move my stitch marker because I feel like this stitch marker is going to be the way that I can count up 6. So I can count 1, 2, the next one 3. Once I have my 6th one, that's where we're going to begin our thumb hole. All right, here we are at our 6th row. The way we're counting is we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we know that we've completed 6 rows. Once your 6 rows are complete, here's where we're going to add an increase. Now the way we're going to do our increase is right between the feather stitch we just worked around and the next one, we're going to put a half double crochet. That's it. That's our increase. When we come back around, we're going to hug this stitch. So let me go ahead and continue with my feather stitches around, and then I will meet you right back to show you where the legs will go when you hug your half double crochet. Okay, so I've worked my way back around to where my half double crochet is. The way I'm going to increase around this stitch is really just going to be the same way. The space before, the space under, and the space after. Space before, space under, space after. Just like that. And now we are going to set up for one more increase. So now we're going to put a half double crochet into that space. Work our regular feather stitch around. And I will meet you right back again at our next increase stitch when we come back around. All right, I've reached my next half double crochet for my increase. I'm going to work into the first space, the space directly underneath it, which is actually the same space it was worked into, and then the space after it. Okay, that's the last increase. Now what we're going to do, move our stitch marker up, and you'll notice when you look at your stitches like this, these 2 rows are your originals, and these 2 are your increase. So you're gonna find your first original row, and we're gonna put a stitch marker right before it. And this is where we're going to stop when we come back around so we can make the hole for the thumb. So continue working your feather stitches all the way across or around and stop stop at the feather stitch right before your stitch marker. All right, here we are right before our stitch marker. Now what we're going to do with our thumb hole is we are going to skip this original line of feathers, both of our increases, and then this original row of feathers. So first we're going to put a double crochet into the same stitch that we just ended our last feather stitch. Now we're going to yarn over, go all the way, skipping those 4 feathers and coming right to this spot and building a feather right in as if we were continuing our round. Just like usual, only we're skipping those 4 stitches. We've also added that double crochet there because we're going to add a feather stitch when we come back around, okay? So now you're going to take your stitch marker back out, and we're going to place our stitch marker into the front of our first feather stitch coming around. Go ahead and work your feathers around. Now what we're going to do though is finish off with our last rows of our feather stitch. So this one is going to count as the first row beyond our thumb hole, and we're going to want a total of 4 rounds. 4 going all the way across. Okay, here we are where we put our double crochet right before our thumb hole. Now we're going to feather stitch around it as if it were a feather. So first space, second space, but then our third space is the big thumb hole. So 1 leg, 2 leg, 3 leg. Yarn over, pull through all, chain 1. That's our next feather stitch. So this is our first leg here. 1 leg. Down there will be our second. And then as usual, just after it will be our third. Now that's going to count as our first round completed. So this is the beginning of our first round, and this is our first round completed. So we're going to want, this will count as 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. We're going to do 4 around. All right, here we are right above our stitch. First space, second space, third space. Pull through all, chain 1, and the top part of your thumb hole should look like this. Now, just like we're counting, we've got 1, 2, 3. Now, I want to come all the way around again until I get to 4. I've just finished 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what I'm going to do is take my glove and lay it flat so that my thumb hole is of course on one side and the rest is on the other, of course. Now get your stitch marker, and what we're going to do is we're going to finish our feather stitch only to this end, just to the side. So I'm going to find the feather stitch over here, and I'm going to put my stitch marker right after it. All right, just like that. So your feather stitch on this side, your stitch marker will go right after it. We are going to feather stitch up to the stitch marker. Now that we've gotten up to our stitch marker, we can remove our stitch marker. We're not going to need it anymore. And from here into each and every space and feather stitch, when you look at the top, you can see, here's your chain, or here's your feather stitch, chain space, and you can see all the stitches on top. Half double crochet into every stitch, into my feather stitch, into my chain space, into my feather stitch, into my chain space. Now, if you, like I said earlier, if you want your gloves to be longer, feel free to go around another row or 2. That's not a problem. Do this all the way around until you reach your first half double crochet that you made. All right, here we are at our first half double crochet. This is the end of our project, so let me show you what we're doing to finish this out. We're going to put a single crochet into our first half double crochet, and then we're going to slip stitch into the next one. All right, now we're going to do an invisible slip stitch. Remove your hook from your yarn. We're going to go from the back of the stitch of your next stitch, put your hook back on your yarn, and pull it through. Now, working from the inside, all you've got to do is that chain, cut your yarn, and weave in your ends on the inside. But this helps to not see the knot and where your fingerless gloves are ending. So, here we've got our glove. You can go longer if you like, longer here if you like. Really, really nice and squishy. Now, I spent 1 hour making this glove and showing you how. So, this project should be maybe a 2-hour project for an entire set of gloves, a fantastic Christmas gift idea, or whatever. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out my other tutorials, crochet hacks. Check out the channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next time.